I've never trusted a clean retrieval. Too many things can go wrong in salvage work, and most of them do. The ones that don't, those are the ones you should worry about. A dead colony with signs of struggle, raided supply rooms, blast scoring on bulkheads, torn up comms logs, at least tells you something. You know what happened. You know what to avoid. But Kepler 186f doesn't give us that. No bodies, no distress signals, no logs marked with sudden shutdowns or last-minute evacuations. It's just a place left behind. Systems running on backup power that should have died out years ago. Equipment waiting for hands that never returned. I cycle through the mission brief one more time on my suit's wrist display, even though I already know what it says. It hasn't changed. Kepler 186f Colony. Acquisition Protocol. Objective: retrieve all remaining corporate assets, including but not limited to research data, technological infrastructure, and proprietary materials. Directive: ensure full extraction compliance. No anomalies to be reported. No independent records to be made. Risk level low. No hostiles detected. Minimal environmental hazards. That last part sticks with me. Minimal environmental hazards. We've been walking through this colony for an hour, and the structures show no damage, no weathering, no corrosion on exposed metal, no plant overgrowth pushing into the settlement's foundation. The atmosphere reads thin but stable, and the temperature hovers at a near optimal range despite no clear reason for it. The place doesn't feel abandoned. It feels preserved. Ames, our data specialist, is the first to say it out loud. This is wrong. He's ahead of me, standing at an access terminal mounted on the side of one of the colony's outer facilities. I see his gloved fingers twitch at his side before he keys in the corporate override, his breath sharp over the comms. The panel should have required manual rebooting, but it powers on immediately, screen stabilizing as though someone had used it seconds ago. Define wrong, I say, already knowing what he's going to point out. The colony registry hasn't logged a single error. No power failures, no structural faults, no emergency beacons. These systems have been running a full maintenance cycle every 4 hours. That's... He stops himself, looking back at me. There shouldn't be anything left to maintain. He's right. There's no one here. There hasn't been anyone here for over 5 years. No supply shipments, no resource replenishment, no scheduled upkeep. A facility like this should have degraded beyond function by now. At the very least, dust accumulation should have choked up the ventilation systems. Power grids should have failed from unregulated surges. Automated maintenance should have shut down without manual recalibration. But nothing has shut down. We step inside the nearest structure, a research station by the looks of it. The interior is intact, but there's no sign of recent habitation. Personal effects remain untouched in storage lockers. A jacket is draped over a chair, its fabric still perfectly folded over the seat, as though the owner had only stepped away for a moment. There's no dust in the air, but no footprints on the floor either. Tate, our engineer, moves past us toward a central console. He's silent as he unhooks a diagnostic tool from his suit, attaches it to the station's mainframe, and begins pulling logs. He doesn't comment on the room. I don't ask if he sees it too. Ames exhales slowly, reading through the system files as they compile. We're not the first team here, he mutters. I glance at him. Explain. He pulls up a time-stamped entry. It's a report from a previous retrieval team. That shouldn't exist. No other teams were sent here. Kepler 186f was classified as a cold reclamation site, untouched, unscanned, and unreported until now. That's how it was sold to us. A dead contract, open for first claim salvage. I step closer, eyes scanning the entry as it plays. The audio crackles slightly, but the voice is clear. It's mine. Site intact. Power grid stable. No visible structural compromise. No signs of distress or conflict. Initiating standard retrieval protocol. Ames looks at me, then back at the screen, his posture tightening. He scrolls down, opening the next entry. Another timestamp, a few hours after the first. Confirmed presence of unknown material, black fluid-like composition, responsive to environmental changes, potential biohazard. Another log. Unusual cognitive discrepancies noted among crew. Disorientation, false memories, perception anomalies, evaluating impact. And another. Mission compromised, requesting directive reassessment. The final entry. Containment failed. Ames stares at it, his face pale even beneath the harsh glow of the display. His hands hover over the keys like he doesn't want to touch them. I check the timestamps again. The logs aren't from months ago. They're from 6 hours before we landed. Tate exhales, steps back from the console, and rubs his face with one gloved hand. We're leaving. Ames looks at him. We can't. The hell we can't. Tate unhooks his diagnostic tool from the mainframe and makes for the door. Something's wrong here. We call it in, we leave, we let corporate sort it out. Corporate isn't going to pull us out. My voice is steady, but I don't like the way it feels in my throat. I already know. If we leave now, corporate will send another team, and they'll go through this just like we did. I exhale through my nose, adjusting my grip on my rifle. We finished the job. Ames doesn't touch the console again. His hands hover just above the keys, like proximity alone might rewrite the words on the screen. The entries are still there. The logs are real, whether they should be or not. No one speaks. Tate shifts beside me, the weight of his gear creaking slightly, but he doesn't argue. Maybe he wants to. Maybe he knows there's no point. We don't leave, not because we shouldn't, we should. Not because we can't, we still can. But something about the logs keeps us anchored here. I tell myself it's caution, that it's protocol, but I know it's something else. I play the last entry again. The distortion is worse this time, like the audio itself is decomposing the more I listen. My voice comes through the speakers, sharp-edged and hollow. Containment failed. The words feel distant, detached from me. But I remember saying them, not the moment, not the act of recording them, but the truth of them, like something lingering in the space between a dream and waking. Not forgotten, not remembered, but real nonetheless. Ames closes the log, breathing out through his nose. We need to find out what happened here. Tate makes a sound low in his throat. We know what happened. The last team, whoever the hell they were, did exactly what we're doing right now. They thought they could make sense of this place. Thought they could finish the job. And now, they're gone. He doesn't say dead. None of us say dead. Because there aren't any bodies, and maybe that's worse. Corporate won't authorize an extraction without confirming asset retrieval, I say. That means we don't leave without whatever they were trying to contain. Tate turns to face me fully. That thing in the lower bay. Ames straightens. We don't know that's what they were containing. Really? Tate gestures at the console. What else down here fits black, fluid-like composition? Neither of us have an answer. There's only one way to find out. The Specimen containment unit is in the secondary research bay. The descent is uneventful. The facility still hums with power, stable, undisturbed. Every system check reads normal. The halls are cold, the air thin but breathable. The gravity holds steady. The laws of physics remain intact. And yet, the closer we get, the more something feels off. It's not a physical shift, not a glitch in the environment, no flickering lights, no malfunctions. It's subtler than that, a perceptual drift, like stepping onto a staircase you've climbed 100 times only to find one step misplaced. Like the weight of your own body is moving in ways it shouldn't. Just enough to notice, just enough to doubt. The research bay doors recognize our authorization immediately, splitting open with a controlled hiss. Inside, the Specimen containment unit stands at the center of the room. It's a sealed, reinforced pod, a fully enclosed chamber designed for high-risk biological materials. The surface is smooth, black composite, reinforced against external breach, climate-regulated down to the molecular level. Corporate spares no expense when it comes to protecting their assets. Except the thing inside doesn't need protecting. I can see it through the observation panel set into the front of the pod. A mass of shifting, liquid dark material, moving like oil suspended in water. There's no visible structure, no defined form, but it moves. Not randomly, not chaotically. It adjusts, subtle anticipatory shifts along the boundaries of its containment field. It doesn't test the edges. It doesn't recoil from them either. It moves with expectation, as though it already understands exactly where the limits are, like it's done this before. Ames steps closer, eyes fixed on the unit. Jesus. Tate mutters something under his breath, shaking his head. How the hell did they even get this in here? I take a step forward, studying the containment unit. The status indicators read nominal. There are no recorded breaches, no malfunctions. But if the last team sealed this thing inside, then why was the last log entry so certain that containment had failed? I don't realize my hand has moved until my fingers hover just above the pod. Before I make contact, the entity shifts. It presses against the inside of the glass too soon, matching a motion I haven't completed yet. Like it's mirroring an action before it happens, like it remembers. For the first time, it shapes itself, something vaguely human. The outline of a face begins to form, but the features never fully stabilize, the structure collapsing and reforming like it's being built in real time out of material that doesn't want to hold its shape. I snatch my hand back. The imprint lingers on the glass. Tate swears and takes a step back, gripping his rifle. Ames doesn't move, his face a blank slate of cold calculation. "It's reacting," he murmurs. "It knows we're here." A beat of silence. Then, "What if it's not reacting?" Tate says. "What if it's remembering?" Ames glances at him, something dark flickering across his expression. "That's not possible." "Neither is this." Tate gestures at the containment unit. "We just listened to logs, from a mission that never happened. Logs made in Grady's own damn voice. And now this thing moved before he touched the glass, like it already knew he was going to. What if it's not just predicting movement? What if it already knows what we're going to do, because we've already done it?" I meet his eyes, my pulse even, but my mind racing. Because I don't have an argument against that. Because I can't be sure we haven't already done this before. Ames looks back at the entity, something unreadable in his expression. "We need to run a cognitive scan." Tate scoffs. "Oh yeah? And what exactly are we scanning for?" "Discrepancies," Ames says, quiet and firm. "Memory deviations, false recollections, any indication that our cognitive patterns don't match the ones recorded before we landed." Tate laughs, but there's no humor in it. "You want to check if we're already compromised?" "If we are, we need to know," I say. Tate stares at me, then exhales through his nose and mutters, "Fine. But when this confirms we're all still ourselves, I'm walking straight the hell off this rock and letting corporate deal with their own mess." Ames is already moving, pulling the scanner from his pack. He sets it up against the terminal, keying in the calibration sequence. I glance back at the containment unit. The entity has gone still. The human-like shape is gone. It doesn't move, doesn't react, like it's waiting, like it already knows what's coming next. "We do this fast," Tate says. His hand hasn't left his rifle since we entered the bay. "Once we confirm we're all clean, I say we pack this thing up and go." No one agrees. No one disagrees. Ames starts the scan. The system links to the biometrics in our suits, cross-checking with the baseline cognitive patterns recorded before we landed. He doesn't say what he's looking for. He doesn't have to. I watch the containment unit out of the corner of my eye. The entity doesn't move again, but it feels different now, like a conversation that's already ended. A quiet click from Ames's terminal. He stiffens. Tate steps closer. "What?" I ask. Ames doesn't answer right away. He stares at the display, then taps through the data logs, his face unreadable. "There's a discrepancy." Tate exhales sharply. "The hell does that mean?" "It means something's off." Ames's voice is carefully neutral. "Our recorded cognition patterns don't match the ones we came in with." A weight settles behind my ribs, heavy and slow. "Define don't match," I say. Ames taps the screen, pulling up the raw data. Cognitive recall tests baseline at 89% accuracy. That's within acceptable range for minor stress-induced degradation. But he pauses, his expression tightening. Some of our stored pre-mission biometrics don't exist in the archive anymore. The logs recognize us, but there are gaps, like something's missing. Tate doesn't speak at first, then, could be a glitch. Ames shakes his head. No, that would explain inconsistencies, not erased data. There's no system corruption. The missing logs weren't deleted. They were replaced. Silence. I step forward, eyes locked on the screen. Replaced with what? Ames doesn't answer immediately. His fingers move faster over the interface, skimming the metadata. His expression darkens. I don't know, he says finally. But whatever's in these slots now, it isn't ours. Ames doesn't respond. He's scrolling through the archive now, moving faster, skimming the metadata. His fingers hesitate over the screen. There's another set of logs. I step closer. From us? His lips press into a thin line. Not exactly. He pulls up the files, time-stamped hours ago. We lean in, reading. The crew arrives on site, checks the containment unit, runs a cognitive scan, finds discrepancies. I feel something sharp and cold lock into place inside me. This log is describing everything that just happened. That's not possible, Tate mutters. No one recorded this. Ames scrolls further. It doesn't stop there. The entry continues. We decide to finish the job. We prepare for extraction. The rest of the log is missing. Tate straightens, jaw tight. We need to get out of here. Ames's hand hovers over the terminal like he wants to undo what he just saw. Like he can reverse whatever's already in motion. The thought wedges itself into my skull, too large, too final. I feel a slow ache at the base of my neck, a pressure that wasn't there a second ago. The room feels subtly different. The weight of the air, the temperature, the length of the floor beneath my boots. Not enough to confirm, just enough to doubt. Tate takes a step back toward the door. I'm serious, we need to leave, right now. I should say no. I should say we don't leave without finishing the job. But I don't. I look back at the containment unit. It still hasn't moved, and somehow that's worse. We start to leave. Then, the lights cut out. Total blackness. The backup lamps flicker online a second later, emergency strobes casting the research bay in sharp, intermittent slashes of white and shadow. Tate swears, pivoting toward the exit. Ames curses under his breath, hands already moving over the terminal, trying to pull up the system diagnostics. The power grid is still running, he says. There's no outage, no surge. This was deliberate. Who the hell would shut us down? Tate snaps. A heavy silence. Then something shifts. Not in the room. In me. It's a slow pull at first. A misalignment. A wrongness under the skin. Not pain, not pressure. A gap. Like I've forgotten something mid-thought. Like a sentence left unfinished. I close my eyes, I try to find it, the missing piece, the thing I should remember. Nothing. I open my eyes. Ames is looking at me. Don't move, he says. I don't. Tate glances between us, grip tightening on his rifle. What? Ames keeps staring at me, his expression carefully neutral. When did you take your helmet off? The words don't register at first. Then I reach up. My fingers brush skin. The collar of my suit open and unsealed. My helmet is gone. I don't remember removing it. I don't remember feeling the air against my skin. I don't remember anything at all. Tate takes a step toward me, his breath sharp. Jesus, Grady! I didn't take it off, I say. My voice sounds wrong. I don't recognize the shape of it in my own mouth. Ames's fingers twitch at his side. You're sure? I swallow, trying to ignore the way my pulse has started climbing into something frantic, unfamiliar. I would remember, I say. No one speaks. I force myself to breathe evenly. My pulse has climbed into something frantic, unfamiliar. Ames exhales first. We'll find it. Tate looks at him sharply, but Ames is already moving. He doesn't argue. Neither do I. We backtrack. The containment bay is quiet when we return. Nothing has changed, except for the absence. The containment unit is empty. My helmet is sitting inside. Tate stops in the doorway. I see his jaw tighten, the slight shift in his stance as his weight redistributes. A fraction of a second later, he has his rifle up, scanning the room. Ames moves toward the pod first, eyes locked on the helmet like looking away will make it disappear. "This doesn't make sense," he murmurs. "The containment field was stable. There were no breaches, no malfunctions. Nothing should have been able to open this. But it is open. The internal shielding is powered down. The integrity seals disengaged. I step forward, slow and measured, and pick up my helmet. It's mine. My serial number on the HUD. My name stamped on the inside lining. The exterior is clean. No cracks, no dents, no evidence of damage or forced removal. Except I didn't take it off. I turn it over in my hands, checking the biometric logs. The suit records every action, every environmental variable. If I had removed my helmet, the logs would show. System data unavailable. I stare at the screen. The time-stamped entry for helmet removal is missing, not corrupted, not erased. Missing, like it was never recorded in the first place. Ames is still staring into the empty containment pod. "I don't like this." "Yeah?" Tate mutters. "You just now figuring that out?" Ames ignores him. "It didn't escape." Tate lets out a short, humorless breath. "Right, because that would make too much sense." I set my jaw, forcing my voice to stay level. "We need to go. Now." No argument. Tate takes point, sweeping the room one last time before moving to the exit. I follow, helmet in one hand, the other hovering near my sidearm. Ames hesitates just for a second. I don't know what he's waiting for. But he follows. We move fast, retracing our steps through the station. The colony is still unnervingly intact. The lights are stable, the systems are running, the atmosphere remains at breathable levels, despite no logical reason for it. But something feels different. Not visibly, not tangibly, just wrong. My helmet is back on now, the seals locked into place. We reach the airlock. Tate punches in the override and the inner door cycles open with a mechanical whir. The air between us and the outer threshold does not shift. No pressure differential, no temperature drop. Ames glances at the readings on his wrist display. That's not right. I exhale slowly, adjusting my grip on my rifle. Nothing here is. The final airlock disengages. The door slides open. Beyond it, the cutter is waiting, exactly where we left it. The landing thrusters are still engaged in standby mode. The outer hull is illuminated by the station's environmental floodlights, casting the silhouette of our only way out against the barren terrain. It looks the same. But I don't trust it. Neither does Tate. He stands motionless, eyes narrowed, scanning every inch of the approach. "You expecting something to be different?" Ames asks quietly. Tate doesn't respond immediately. Then, "I don't know." But he doesn't lower his weapon. We step out onto the surface. No wind, no dust displacement. The ground is solid beneath our boots. But my sense of balance feels off. Just slightly. Like we're walking across something that's been reconstructed just a little wrong. The cutter's boarding ramp is still down. The access panel is blinking green. Tate looks at me. "You run remote checks from your suit?" I nod, running a quick diagnostic ping to the ship's onboard systems. The preliminary response is normal. The cutter recognizes us. The flight logs confirm we landed once. I feel my breath slow. "Let's move." Ames gets inside first, moving toward the main console, his fingers already moving over the interface as he runs a ship-wide systems check. Tate and I sweep the interior, confirming nothing is out of place. No signs of damage, no signs of entry. Ames finishes the diagnostics. "We're clear. Power level stable. Fuel reserves intact. Nothing's been tampered with." Tate closes the hatch, seals it. I step into the cockpit, securing myself in the pilot's chair, running through launch sequence. The familiar pre-flight checklist cycles through the main display. The cutter hums around me, engines waking up from standby. My hands are steady on the controls. I tell myself that means I'm still myself. The checklist pings green. All systems normal. Ames is still running diagnostics from the central console, scanning for anomalies. Tate is in the co-pilot seat, watching the readouts as our flight trajectory locks in. Everything is functioning. The ship is stable. We are leaving. Then why does it feel like I'm forgetting something? The sensation isn't panic. It isn't disorientation. It's absence. A space in my mind where something should be. The last few hours are clear, what happened, what we saw, how we got here. But just underneath that, something else, something I should remember. I push the thought down, focus on my hands. The weight of them on the controls. The sequence of motions I've done 100 times before. I finish the pre-flight. Ready for departure, I say. My voice is steady. That should mean something. I engage the thrusters. The cutter lifts. The colony disappears beneath us. The planet's surface shrinks away as we ascend, breaking through the thin exosphere, clearing the gravity well. The acceleration stabilizes. The vibrations of the launch smooth out. We are clear. We are free. The nav display shows our trajectory locked to return coordinates. Tate exhales, tensions still in his shoulders, but no longer coiled tight. Ames sits back from the console, running a hand over his face. No one speaks for a long time. I stare at the console, watching the telemetry update. Numbers cycle through. Thrust vectors, engine temperature, fuel efficiency. Everything is normal. Too normal. The thought arrives quietly, but it sticks. Something is wrong. I don't know how I know. It isn't the instruments. It isn't the ship. It's something deeper than that. A weight that has settled into my mind, solid but intangible, like a word caught at the edge of speech. Feels too easy, Tate mutters. I glance at him. What? He doesn't look away from the viewport. We were expecting it to stop us, the entity. We thought it was going to follow us, do something, but it just let us go. Ames doesn't answer. Tate finally looks at me. Does that feel right to you? No, it doesn't. I grip the controls, staring at the readings. The numbers are right. The displays are right. We are in motion. But something about our velocity feels off. Not visibly, not in any way the instruments can detect. Just off. I flick through the flight logs, pulling up our departure data. The entry is there. One launch. No anomalies. No conflicting timestamps. The logs show everything in the exact sequence it happened. Except, I scroll further. The entries before our arrival. The automated records of our approach to Kepler 186F. The descent, the landing procedure. And then, another departure log. Time-stamped 6 hours ago. I stop breathing. Ames notices first. What is it? I don't answer. I open the log. The cutter's flight recorder pulls up the last transmission. The file is corrupted, but the audio stabilizes enough to play. A voice comes through the speaker. My voice. Mission compromised. We are clear of the colony, leaving orbit now. Tate slowly turns his head toward me. What the hell? The ship shudders. Not turbulence, not system failure. Something else. Something inside. Ames swears, hands moving fast over the console, pulling up interior readings. The cutter is intact. No hull breaches, no atmospheric shifts. But the motion doesn't stop. The ship is moving wrong. A deep, gut-level wrongness, like space itself, is bending around us in ways the body wasn't built to interpret. I grip the controls, trying to steady it. Tate curses, pulling up navigation. Something's messing with the output. Our position data just scrambled. The ship jolts. Not a mechanical failure, not an impact. A correction. Like something just shifted us back into place. Like we were drifting too far from where we're supposed to be. And then I see it. The nav readout, the external cameras, the colony, Kepler 186F below us, exactly where it was before. My chest goes tight. I flick through the flight logs again, scrolling backwards, searching. The last departure log, time-stamped 6 hours ago. We already left. And now we're back. My hands feel cold. My breathing is too slow, too even, like my body already understands something my mind won't catch up to. Tate stares at the screen. His voice is too level. Tell me that's a glitch. Ames runs the scan. I can see the answer on his face before he says it. It's not a glitch. I open the comms log. The previous transmission is still there. The last thing we sent before we left. Mission compromised. We are clear of the colony, leaving orbit now. The timestamp is identical to this moment. Tate stands abruptly. We're overriding the jump drive. Ames doesn't argue. He's already moving, already keying into the system. Tate pulls up the manual bypass, preparing for a blind jump. No calculations, no preset destination, just getting the hell out. I keep my hands on the controls, stare at the console, at my own flight data, at the evidence of something I can't understand. Then I see it. One last log entry, one I never recorded. I click it open. There's no date, no metadata, just my voice. You never left. The ship lurches, the interior lights dim, and for the first time I understand. It didn't stop us from leaving. It let us go, because we've been leaving this place over and over and over again. And we always come back.